Hello, welcome. So, this is by no means a definitive guide to being human. That would be hubris to think that any one human being, or indeed any any number of human beings besides all of us, could possibly say what it is to be human. This is simply a study in what it is to be, what it's been to be human up until this point in human history, and at least for the foreseeable future. And certainly, as far as, it's so hard to imagine with this whole Aquarian age and this whole shift in technological progress and technological progress, to just imagine what being human in the future would be like. So I don't want to pretend like I know what's going to happen in the future, or to have, again, the hubris to say, oh, this is what it will always be like to be human. But certainly I think that even in the future, as we grow technologically and as we invest in bionics and all sorts of different technologies, indeed, and moving on in consciousness and whatnot, I do feel that there will be, again, our roots, our foundations, even in that far off futuristic landscape, our roots will be here and right now. This, and of course in all the other times in which being human meant what we're very familiar with it being. So, yes, where to begin? Let's do an exercise. Look at your hands. Look at your body. On the material, physical plane, we are evolved monkeys. It's undeniable, and I know that this is upsetting for some because this goes against certain religious teachings, but at the end of the day, if you look at our bodies, if you look at, of course, the evidence for evolution, and if you look at the bodies of other monkeys, you see that indeed, genetically, biologically, physiologically, we are evolved monkeys. This is not a bad thing at all. It's just simply what it is. We are, of course, an animal, just like others. Now, the beautiful thing is we have this divine consciousness. On this planet, humanity, rather Homo sapiens, has evolved to the point of developing consciousness. And man, that's a whole nother discussion of theories of consciousness developing, as a whole nother topic. But in any case, I want to keep this as focused as possible, this talk. We are divine monkeys on the material plane. And again, we have this divine consciousness, we have our minds, we have our emotions. Not saying that other animals don't have minds and emotions, but we have very developed, keen senses of minds and emotions. And as well as just that, again, that divine spark. Fascinating. So this is part of our reality. No matter how much we ascend in consciousness, no matter yada yada yada, here we are, we have biological urges, needs. We all shit, we all spit, we all have some kind of sexual urges. We all breathe. We all feel pain. Now, of course, again, I don't mean to generalize. I know that there are certain anomalies in our human family that, for example, some people who don't feel pain because of neurological happenstances and whatnot. But I'm just speaking by and large. What is the general biological reality for us? So yes, we all feel pain. We all have the ability to reproduce. We're all linked by our bodies. Truly, it doesn't matter what our bodies look like. It doesn't matter what our skin color is. It doesn't matter whatever. We all are biologically the same, more or less. We all have the same physical realities. We all age. We all die. We all are prone to diseases. And again, I don't mean to assume for the future. I'm sure that with such pioneering scientists such as Aubrey de Grey and others committed to halting aging, that all of us having a fixed death, a certain death, rather I should say, Who knows what that will exist in the future? But at least in this current day, certainly we do have an inevitable death at some point. Let's let that sink in. That's some very that is our reality. That is what all of us. It doesn't matter. Imagine your greatest heroes, those who you love most in your life, your closest loved ones. Imagine, just run the gamut of humanity, of people you know. You don't have to know them personally, but just imagine from one end to the other, the most lovely person to the most, cruel and whatever, despicable, however you want to put it. All of those people are united by the same things. Look at history. Every single famous historical figure, every single non-famous historical figure, linked by this common reality that we share, that you and me share. That is part of what makes us human, that biology, that material plane. So moving on to the next part. Another part that makes us human is the mind. And, should we go mind or emotions next? We'll just go with mind. This isn't in any particular order, by the way. Indeed, I actually, in my understandings of the different planes of being, and in my studies with this, many people say that the mental plane, the air plane, the intellectual plane, we talk about that a lot in astrology. If you're interested in that, the 4 elements, please feel free. I have a couple of videos on that. But the mental plane is said to be above the material, above the water plane as well, the emotional plane. I'm not saying it's better, it's just a higher form of perceiving. So whereas in the material plane, here we are, Earth, reality, evolved monkeys, very much biological senses. Another thing that links us, by the way, is fear. That survival instinct. Our bodies is what keeps the other planes in line. Of course, on the highest plane, we are the universe, God, spiritual. We are consciousness, knowing itself, the ultimate in all ultimates. And of course, that lives beyond the body. But just that energy, I guess you could say, energy, consciousness, however you want to understand it. But, right, so we have the material plane. Moving on to the mental plane. We all have minds. It doesn't matter whether your Mercury is in Gemini or Taurus or Scorpio. It doesn't matter. We all think. We all have processes. Now, and I should say, we all have the capacity for logic. A to B. 1 + 1 = 2. These kind of understandings of the world. And again, we all have different processes. Some of our minds are much more logical and communicative than others. Some are much more subjective, and they have that beautiful gift. They have the wonderful understanding of thinking in very different ways. That is just both the super logical and super subjective, very beautiful. But no matter what, we all have a mind. We all have the ability to perceive, to think, to actualize. I'm sorry, what's the word I'm looking for? To idealize? Ideation, essentially. To have ideas, to have concepts, to understand patterns. This is another part of being human, of having a body, is this perspective that we all have that's unique to us. Even if other people, for example, I have Mercury and Gemini myself, even if other people have Mercury and Gemini, and in my case, and in the house of Aquarius, they still don't have the exact same mind. They may have very, very incredibly similar tools, indeed. Astrologically speaking, that is very much the case. Energetically, we are very much on the same wavelength. If we have the same Mercury, if we think the same way and perceive the same way. But at the end of the day, that is a different mind. It's been under different circumstances. And even if you tried to condition 2 different people to think the exact same way, even with those same tools, they're not going to. Let alone because of different experiences, but even taking from a thought experiment from birth, taking 2 people that have all the same energies and specifically focusing on the Mercury energies and trying to control how they think the entire way. It's fascinating how we all use our minds differently. And of course that also is free will, and that's the divine spark, that's part of it, of course. But our minds are, it's very interesting how, each one of us has a completely unique mind. We're going to see things in different ways. We're going to perceive in different ways. We're going to focus on different things. And so focusing more on the general, what does it mean to have a mind? The mind is never satisfied. It is always, of course, some people's minds are more curious than others, but at the end of the day, all of our minds are just sitting and absorbing, going, whoa, perceiving, whoa, and always trying to find the answers out for everything. Now, this is a great tool. It's one of the beautiful things about being human is we think, we perceive, we imagine, you know, not just on an emotional way, such as dreams and all sorts of whatnot, but we imagine in concepts, we envision things. This is all part of our mind. This is a tool that we use to help us just survive, and not just to survive, but to thrive, to really enjoy living. It's simply a part of human existence. But like I was saying, it just like the body, it has beautiful gifts, it has beautiful challenges. Well, I would say the challenges are beautiful because ultimately there's, as Teresa, my wonderful friend and mentor, has said, oh man, I totally lost it. I'm sorry, give me a second. Right. As she said recently, and I very much resonate with, there's always benefit. There's always positive. There's always, even when things seem to go wrong, they go right. It all works out. It all resolves. So, the challenge for the mind is it's never satisfied. It's always looking for answers. It's addicting. Thinking is a very much addicting thing for all of us, and even whether we're thinking in the more whatever our modes of thinking, we're all always trying to figure out every step of the way. What am I going to do for today? How am I going to do this? Why? How? When? How? Notice how the word how comes up a lot. It's one of our beautiful, that curiosity is a wonderful thing, but the mind unchecked, the mind undisciplined, untrained, it just runs on and on and on and on, and it can really cause a lot of distress. That's where so many people, it seems, are challenged by anxiety. Certainly I have. It's part of being human. We all have felt anxiety at some points. Some people feel it very common, very frequently. I see that as the mind just getting away from ourselves, the mind going unchecked. The mind causes us to do so many things by behavior that are really not logical. And so I hesitate to say that the mind is purely logical. Rather, maybe a better way of putting it is the mind can be very illogical about being logical. Trying to find answers for everything is not a great way of being. For all of our minds, it's a temptation to think, what am I going to do today, tomorrow, a week from now, a month, a year? How do I control that? And of course, the mind thinks it understands everything. It's all of us, you know. It tempts us into that illusion sometimes, and we have to train it. Going, no. So I love Buddhism so much, and that's why it's called a science of the mind, because Buddha and the Buddhist tradition teaches that the mind is something to be controlled, to work with, not something to vilify, but something to work with and something to really understand. When you turn the mind in on itself, you can truly free yourself from its challenges. And it's everybody's got to do it at some point. You've got to think about thinking, how you think, why you think, especially the how. Again, especially that how, because otherwise the mind just goes on and on and on. For me, for example, even after years of studying myself, years of reflecting, years of studying the different astrological energies, it still was tempting for my mind to try and, like I said before, figure out everything and to try and find an answer. And that's why it's said in a lot of spiritual traditions, why it's so important to be able to not, especially in Buddhism, to not have to be so tied up with fixing everything all the time, to allow a problem to come up and not have to go right away and fix it. Because mind can get so engrossed in trying to accomplish. It can get so engrossed in trying to solve, trying to understand, that again we lose control of it. It becomes out of balance, and so we run ourselves ragged. We don't get the sleep we need. We don't recharge our body the way we need to, or emotions. We can torture ourselves with our minds. Truly, our minds are our greatest gifts and our greatest challenge as well, in my opinion, for all of us. Certainly some of us more than others. Perhaps, well, I don't know. I think that remains to be seen. But certainly, if you don't train your mind, and you're the only one who can train it, other people can provide guidance, they can provide all of the guidance and help that you could hope for. And indeed, they do. There's so much wonderful wisdom out there in the world. There's just a plethora of wisdom. But if you yourself do not turn your mind in on itself, to observe itself and to understand itself, to be able to work with itself more efficiently and more healthily, so to bring balance in your life, that wisdom is useless if you don't do that. And of course, if you do that, then all that wisdom is wonderful, and then you can really understand, how do I use this in my life? How do I apply this? Because ultimately, your mind, like I was saying before, is unique to you. And you know yourself better than anyone else, and you know your mind better than anyone else. And if you feel like you don't know your mind, then you just simply need to reflect. Again, meditate, and really introspect, get in touch with yourself, how you think, why you think. If you have a calm mind, you have a calm life. If you have an agitated mind, you have an agitated life. It doesn't matter if the other parts of you, the other parts of being human, are in sync or not. If you don't have a calm mind, your body is going to eventually run ragged. It's going to not get enough sleep. It's going to fall victim to disease. It's falling victim from negative thoughts from your own self, basically. It is up to us to figure out our minds. That's part of being human, like I was saying. And it's a never-ending process. Always. Always. Unless we keep a hawkeye on our minds. Just like we keep a hawkeye on our egos. Just make sure that we don't overstep, how to put it, so that we don't abuse our power. Because again, the mind, just like the ego, has great power. And if we just are using it without thinking, it can lead to some seriously destructive consequences. It can. It doesn't have to be. But certainly if we're mindless about our mind, it very much can. And truly, it's incredible. I see so many people, less and less, honestly, and that's nice because it shows the shift in our consciousness going into this new age of understanding, of enlightenment, of both self and others. But certainly in the past, and even in the present, although admittedly less so, yay, I see people going in circles because they just don't get their mind yet. And it's not that they can't get their mind. We all can understand how our minds work. We just have to do the work. It's not easy. It's one of the hardest things I think we have to do here on Earth, is to really sit and reflect and understand ourselves. There are all sorts of tools available. Again, there's wisdom out there. There are great practices such as meditation. As I've said in several videos, I love the use of psychedelics, and that's been, for me personally, one of the best tools at understanding the mind and being able to see it from a different perspective, so you can really understand it when you get back into it, when you're conscious. Or rather, when you come back from that super conscious state achieved by LSD or shrooms or whatever. And again, as always, I just want to do a disclaimer that it's not for everyone. And again, my personal opinion, it's not for everyone at this current time. But certainly it's a great tool. It's a very great tool. And if you think that you'd benefit from using it, then after some very deep introspection, reflection, then I think it's a great tool to use. Honestly, from personal experience, I recommend it. But again, only if you feel it's right for you. Don't fall victim to peer pressure. So, in any case, we have the body, we have the mind, the ego. Very interesting. This is, I equate with, and actually it's commonly equated, not just me, but commonly equated with fire energy. So whereas the mind is commonly equated with air energy, the body is equated with earth energy, the ego is fire. Now, as with the body, as with the mind, and as with the emotions, water energy, the ego has its beautiful gifts and its challenges that we have to work through. It's beautiful challenges. It's challenges that provide benefit in the long run, although may not be the funnest thing to deal with in the short run right now. We all have an ego. We are all of that one force. It doesn't matter what your spiritual denomination is. If you're an atheist, it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it's undeniable that all of the energy that we are, that is around us, that is others, conceptualize it all you want. Think of multiverses even. At some point, I know it's an unfathomable thing, but to put it into words, rather it's a logically and verbally unfathomable thing. It's impossible to put into words, but we'll try. It's worth trying. There is that whole. Again, think of multiverses, think of all of the whatever. The all, the whole, the universe, God, energy. We are that. But what's really interesting about being human is we also have the individual perspective. And not just the mind, but the ego. There's something very different about those two. The ego is not as rational and logical. It's not a tool. I see the mind as a tool. The ego is just raw force. It's just raw power. It's raw individuality. You are you. I am me. That is what the ego ascertains. And of course, again, that is an illusion. It's important to get past the you are separate from me, because again, we are a part of that divine whole. But part of being human is celebrating this fact that at the end of the day, I am Will, you are you. And that's a special thing, to be unique. Each one of us are ultimately part of the same, but we are all also souls, winding through ourselves, the universe, learning new things, developing, getting back to the source, as I've heard said so many times. I really love that. We're on an adventure in these lifetimes, and part of the whole reason of being, of incarnating as a human being, as a creative being, is to celebrate this, is to have fun being the small one instead of the big one, the capital one. Small, or you could say the small, the lowercase God, instead of the uppercase God. And we never stop from being the one, the God, the universe. But it is fun. It's really fun to take a step back from that and say, okay, now I'm just gonna be that person. That is my life. In this lifetime, this is who I am. It's fun. It's interesting. It adds mystery. It adds challenge. It adds really great gifts. Just to be an autonomous individual whilst, of course, still being connected to the spiritual one. Now, it has great challenges as well. That challenge is to get engrossed in the one. And ego is the source, I find, for, as well as undisciplined mind. Well, really, undisciplined mind builds on this. I find this is the root of the challenge of us versus them. is this idea of me and you, me and them. The idea that the ego is the end all be all, the most important thing. I have to make sure I survive over other people. The ego has all sorts of stupid illusions like that. All sorts of just ideas. It's not even a mental thing, but all sorts of assumptions about life that are very illusory and can be very destructive if adhered to. If we all believed the ego's temptation, and we all hear it every day, we all hear the whispering of the ego going, hey, think about yourself, don't think about others. Hey, do this. Hey, be selfish. Hey, be mean. If we all followed that, especially if we followed it all the time, God, it's not fun. We'd have a very destructive world. And indeed, 2 ages ago, here we are going into this Aquarian age, literally egolessness, and not to vilify the fire signs, not to vilify especially Leo, the partner sign of Aquarius, because fire, again, ego is wonderful, fire is wonderful, we all have it. I have tons of Leo and Aries, and we should celebrate this, but we need to face facts. The ego has its challenges, and these are its challenges. Just like every sign, every energy has its challenges. And yeah, as I was saying, with 2 ages ago, going into this Aquarian age now, the Piscean age of the last 2,000 years, before that we had the age of Aries. And I see it as there's so much war. And we still had war over the last 2,000 years. But there's so much war just for conquering's sake. I find that the war for the last 2,000 years, it was much more not to say that there wasn't war for conquering's sake this last 2,000 years, but I find that there's a lot more of a religious, idealistic bent towards the wars, very much the Piscean flair of things, instead of just going back to the previous age, where it was just about conquering. And again, not to say that there wasn't ideals back then, but just so many cultures. One thing I'd like to point out too is in the grand scheme of human history, we weren't coming from the greatest of places. I mean, our recordable history doesn't go back very far, really, if you think about the overall scheme of time, just a couple thousand years. Even then, I want to say we really, our historical logs only go back very accurately to antiquity, late antiquity, which I don't know the official time span, but I would say about 500 years BCE, time of around that time of ancient Athens and ancient Greece and whatnot. So it makes sense why there's a lot. I'm sorry, I know I'm kind of being diffused, but just stick with me. So it makes sense why there's a lot of conflict and that not a lot of civilization was rooted in that time, in the age of Aries. But at the same time, so that being, human history kept in mind, at the same time, during this age, there was just war all the time. And even, oh goodness. Yeah, I very much see it as a time of great conflict and great ego, great just conquering, and not fun stuff. So, in any case, what it means to be human and to have an ego. Celebrate your ego. Don't get attached to it, though. We are all, even if in the future we scientifically change, we scientifically nullify death, if we figure out, really when, we figure out our biological processes to be able to extend them indefinitely. Even at that point, life is not certain. And even if death isn't certain, in that case, we don't know if we're going to die. So we should always, unless we ascend to a whole other point of consciousness, which I guess maybe that deserves a when too, when we ascend to plane of consciousness above the body? I have no idea. I really don't know. That's a fascinating, mind-boggling thought, and it's hard to even fathom at that point. But so long as we have a body, the potential for death is there. And so I think it's a healthy thing, and especially for us in this day and age, it's a very healthy thing to keep death in mind for the ego, to keep it in check. Because otherwise the ego can get carried away with all sorts of silly illusions, such as, ooh, I'm having fun making money. I should make as much money as possible and not even give a damn or a thought to other people who may not have the same privilege of being able to generate this earthly wealth. The ego is silly like that. Or, ooh, I am so good. I'm better than other people. The ego, again, we all know. We've all been through ego tirades. There's no need to feel ashamed of them. It's just we need to learn from them. We need to not feel proud of our ego. We not feel proud of especially those times when our ego flared up and was mean or selfish or narrow-minded or whatever. The ego is powerful. It has such creative power. It's incredible, truly. And it's really beautiful how individuals can just be so unique and so creative. And we all are creative in our own ways, whether you're literally an artist or you're an engineer. We all have that power to create and to totally, how to even put it into words, we get to generate light, to generate heat, fire in this world, inspiration, to inspire others through our the ego at its highest, fire energy at its highest, is just wonderfully, my goodness, transcendent. And indeed, I think it says a lot about the ego when ego at its best is egolessness, is a state of totally being in the moment and being in tune with yourself to just create such so much heat, so much light, so much just love. And we all do that in different ways. Again, it doesn't matter if you're an artist, engineer, whatever. We all have that fire. We all have that ego. And it's important we express it. The ego needs to be expressed. That's the whole point of having one. It's the whole point of being human, is to use that ego, to have fun with it. We just have to remember to keep it in check. That's all. Just like the mind. Alright, so what else it is to be human? Emotions, the water. We feel. We are earth and water beings, as I've said in a couple videos. That is the nature of our reality, the nature of our planet. I mean, literally, look at our planet. It's mostly earth and water. Look at our bodies. It's earth and water. It's solid. It's tangible. Water is coursing through us. We replenish. You know? Emotions resonate through water. I always forget his name. I need to remember his name. But there's a Japanese scientist who's done some really incredible work on how emotions affect water. If you just Google Japanese scientist water, it'll come up. It's like, I can't remember. All I can remember is Shigeru Miyamoto. But he's the guy who's behind so many great Nintendo games. It's not him. But it starts with an M. I believe his last name starts with an M. In any case, wonderful, wonderful work. I love it. And it says so much about considering our bodies are mostly water. Our emotions and our physical reality, our bodies, are so linked. And that's a very important thing to keep in mind. Really, all of these are linked. And our mind on our emotions is another really something to keep in mind. That our thoughts affect our emotions. And if we think negative thoughts, we're going to feel bad. If we think positive thoughts, we're going to feel good. If we communicate and our mind is always involved in communications, of course, so are emotions, so are literally our bodies, all these body tools, ego, of course. But yeah, like I was saying, in communications, realizing that we affect other people's emotions so much. It's not just through communications, but just being around somebody. We affect their emotions. Emotions are such a useful, fascinating, mysterious tool. We get hunches, we get psychic senses. That's where our psychic gifts come from, being human. It's just having a feeling, I can't explain it, but I know. It's instinct, intuition. It's incredible. And it's one of the most beautiful things, in my opinion, about being human. I think all of the tools we're talking about are incredibly beautiful. No one more important or more beautiful than the other. But certainly emotions are just so wonderful. Our ability to feel so deeply is a gift. And again, it has its challenges. Negative emotions are very, very, very challenging. And just like our mind, we need to discipline our emotions. Now, that does not mean control. That does not mean squash or confine or telling ourselves, don't feel this. It's bad to feel that. No, that's never the answer. Indeed, letting ourselves cry, letting ourselves feel is very important. Acknowledging that we have emotions is very important. And I know that in patriarchal societies out throughout the world, especially men expressing their emotions is very much frowned upon. But that's very much backwards. And how do I even put it? It's a anti-natural stance. We all feel deeply. We can't get away from it. It is in our bodies. It is our blood. It's not even in our blood. It is our blood. Blood being mostly water. My goodness, we feel so deeply, all of us. We need to accept this as part of being human. And we need to celebrate it, to allow ourselves to feel more. It's scary. It is. Being vulnerable is scary. But ultimately, we exist. Here we are. We're on this planet. We've incarnated here. So let's use the tools at our disposal. Let's feel. And let's seek to feel as much as possible. Now, again, one of the challenges is addiction to emotion. Getting a rush when buying something, or when eating something, or whatever. Drugs, sex. There's so many, because emotions are tied up in everything that we do, and because everything we do affects our emotions, it can be very easy to slip into an emotional addiction to something, whatever it is. Of course, the most obvious examples would be heroin and whatnot, drugs that are designed to make you feel a certain way. Emotions are so powerful, and if we don't consciously explore our emotions, if we don't consciously let ourselves feel whatever it is that we need to feel, and we don't know, the mind thinks it knows, and the mind is very useful for understanding emotions and guiding through all that, but ultimately the mind can only conceptualize emotions. It can't actually feel them. So we don't even really know what we need to feel. We have no idea. And we never will. That's the beauty of it. We just keep on going through life and learning. And that goes for all of our different facets of ourselves. But as per emotions especially, they're so mysterious, so powerful, that we have to rely on them to guide us. Nothing else can guide us with them. Truly important that we explore our emotions endlessly, and that we learn to go with them, not fighting the tide, trying to swim upstream. Not trying to put a dam and say, no, you must stop flowing. Because ultimately that dam will break. It's inevitable. It doesn't matter who we are. You could have some of the most emotionless energies imaginable. And you'll feel. Can't help it. We all do. It's just like with the mind. You can have the most subjective mind there, but you're still going to think. You're still capable of logic. You're still capable of, even if you see logic in a very subjective way, you're still going to, your mind works. You're still able to ascertain things, to see patterns, to understand. Just like with the heart, with emotions. If your moon sign, say you had an earth moon and an air house, double logic moon. Or earth moon, earth house, air moon, air house, however you want to put it. You can be as logical as you want about your emotions and understand it. Have really great gifts. I actually really admire the gifts of those people who have that, who are able to think about their emotions and really guide them through their thoughts. Those people still feel. Those people are still prone, still able to be highly rational, and indeed in some cases even more rational than others, because they don't let that emotion flow. So it's truly important for all of us to just accept it. That's part of being human. And especially for guys to consciously accept that it's a beautiful thing to feel. It's a wonderful thing. And we should open up. We should allow more love into our lives. How is that a bad thing? It's a wonderful thing. And the way to do that, again, is just to affirm feeling. To allow ourselves to feel. To embrace it. And, like I was saying, to discipline ourselves. It's all about training. It's all about practice. All about practice. Not controlling our emotions. You must feel this. But guiding them. So, last but not least, certainly, indeed, last but the overarching all is that divine spark. And it's what we, for millennia, for all of recordable human history and beyond, I'm sure, I've wondered about, pondered about, thought about, written about, talked about, debated about, argued about, killed about, all sorts of stuff. And the killing part, not so good, not so good. But the divine spark of consciousness, it's a part of being human. And indeed, it is our true nature. It's irony, because I know being human is here, being body, being the mind, being emotions, being the ego. But more than anything, we are that spiritual force that is all. That spiritual force that is beyond human. We are, again, the one, the universe, God. And here we are now, in this particular form, to experience these particular experiences, to learn, to enjoy ourselves, to cry, to feel pain, to feel love. It's all part of the package. And the more we just accept that, and the more we just accept that we are eternal beings, that we are energy, we are neither created nor destroyed. We just are. We just go from one phase of matter to the next. We never disappear. We never appeared in the first place. We just became human. Just as we will become something else as we head out to these lives. And if we so choose, then we'll, when we reincarnate as human or whatever, wherever, we will still be that all. That spirit. Let's put it as that spirit or soul. So, that is one perspective on what it is to be human. Again, certainly, my aim was not to say this is the. My aim is never to say this is the end all be all. Listen to me. No, this is just one perspective. But certainly, my vision, my focus, I was hoping to be as universal as possible and to provide a picture for all of us of what it is to be human. And I invite you to ponder this, and if you feel the urge, please, to leave a comment of other aspects that I didn't include. Aspects that only you, from your particular mind, from your particular emotions, your particular body and ego, and your divine spark could grasp and could communicate to others that mine couldn't or didn't. Please feel free. I would absolutely love that. I'd appreciate that. It's so interesting being human, especially at this time. This great shift. It's fascinating. It's fun. It's aggravating. It's frustrating as all hell. But it's worth it. It's so beyond words worth it for all of us. No matter what pain or trauma or suffering we go through, we cling to being human, and that's a good thing. We cling to life, and that's a good thing. Because only through clinging to life, even while making our peace with death, not trying to say we need to run from death, or death is a part of life. No need to fear death. But certainly caring for life, nurturing life as much as possible, and trying to be alive as much as possible. It's a beautiful thing, because like I was saying, no matter what trauma we go through, time and life work together to make beautiful, beautiful resolutions of conflict. And we heal. All of what we are has the capability of healing. Body, mind, emotions, ego, spirit. Of course, spirit doesn't even need to be healed. Spirit is always fine. So, enjoy. Have fun. All the work is already done for you. Enjoy. Here we are. We don't need to do any more work to be. Here we are. We exist. And we have all of these wonderful tools at our disposal. We just need to figure out how to use them. And it's up to each one of us to figure out how to use them. But hopefully these are some useful tools for the tools. Namaste, my friend. And may you enjoy your tools endlessly and go on infinite adventures with them. Whether you're human or some other life form that's similar or some other life form that's not similar. Or we are all spirit. That is what we truly are.